This afternoon, we are joined by Mr. William Dettmering, who is running for House District 107 to represent Horry County down by the beach. Mr. Dettmering, thanks for joining us this afternoon.
Well, thank you, Mr. Kelly, to have me here. This is wonderful. I have enjoyed to be able to come here and express our little expression of libertarianism here on the sand.
Well, if there's a perfect place for it, the sand is always the perfect place.
That's right.
Everything's better on the sand. So we'll just start by letting our members get to know a little bit about you. So if you would, tell us a little bit about your personal and professional background and how that shapes your views on the importance of education.
Okay. I was born and raised in a very rural community up in Wisconsin. It's called East Troy. It's very similar to Myrtle Beach in some ways because we just had agriculture and tourism. We had the Alpine Valley Music Theater and ski resort. That was our other little main cottage industry that was in our place. My mother is a teacher. My father was actually a member of the local school board when I was growing up. And so education played a very prominent role, and education actually brought me to Myrtle Beach. I am living in in the same condo as the best friend of my grandmother, who was the professor of art at University of Wisconsin-Whitewater, named Catherine Crossman. And we purchased this condo from her. And they have a nice building there, the Crossman Gallery, that's dedicated to her at this time. But professionally, I went to school at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, and I got a bachelor's degree down in Florida. I was working with General Motors for about 12 years in the service parts industry for the service parts operations for them, AC Delco. Moved all over the Southeast for that. And well, I guess some of the things that shaped my my political beliefs is I mowed the grass for a fellow named gosh, what was his name? He was I think he was defense secretary, or maybe his education. No, it was defense for the Carter administration, I believe. Anyway, Les Aspin. He had a little place that was up there, and one day he knew that I was trying to get into the academies, and he said, "But I understand your parents vote Republican." And I said, "Well, I guess so. I guess so." And he goes, "Oh, it's too bad, because I would really like to support your letter to get into the academies." So right there, it kind of said, I think there might be a little bit more to politics and government than just freedom and expression of the people. And I guess I was kind of jaded by that little exchange too, but I wavered between my sisters looking at the kind of the social liberal aspect of things. She was very strong politically too. We both went to these indoctrinations from the state called Badger Girls State and Badger Boys State, where we learned how to form a state and how state governments work and so on. And so we were interested in that way, but my political views always stemmed from the, I think, more the economic side, and hers was more on the social side. And between that, through our lives, we've kind of melded that. She's an attorney down in Georgia. And so it's this diametric thinking of, we've got to be financially responsible. And I like to have people have the freedoms of their money and control of their communities, along with, I like the idea of having the freedom of thought, the freedom of expression, the freedom of societal kind of things that went through. And this dynamic has kind of spilled into my political life and has gone through forward. I've been active in the community for many years here in Myrtle Beach. I actually helped form what they call the 5 Points area in downtown Myrtle Beach. I had a little office there. I was running a business, And somebody asked me if they knew I had a little bit of expertise in administration, and they said, "Can you help us form this thing? We don't know how to actually run it, get it incorporated, and so on." So I worked with a local attorney, and I was the first administrator that started it. And then when my late wife was having cancer, work down in Charleston, I got a call about the downtown in Myrtle Beach having great excitement because some of the businesses I worked with were actually being leaned on by the Downtown Redevelopment Committee to get their properties. And this outraged me. So when I did, my wife did pass away, and I moved back here, and I did get back into the activity of what's going on here in my community and in my state. And here I am. I still do podcasts, still do activity, and so on. And I'm shocked that I'm even in this race, to be honest with you. This was kind of a last minute thing. I was sitting at a libertarian meeting with a friend of mine, and I said, "Do we have anybody that is able to run?" And he said, "Well, I don't know if we can. I don't know if the timing is right," and so on. And I said, "You know what? I'll look into it, and if I can, I'll put my name in." And that's what brought me here today.
Well, that's great, and it's obviously an open seat this go round, and I appreciate you being willing to serve the state in that way.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You mentioned financial responsibility being a big priority for you, and obviously finance is a huge issue in education since it is either first or second in terms of state government functions and spending level from a year-to-year basis.
Yeah.
And so one of the big issues around that is funding equity. And that's something the General Assembly started looking at last year because there are discrepancies in the level of funding that's provided to public schools across counties in this state based on local tax paying ability and things of that nature. So if elected to the General Assembly, what do you see as the role of the General Assembly in providing an equitable and excellent education for children across the state, regardless of their zip code?
Well, that's, when we're talking about funding equity, it brings up a great question. But is there an expense equity? I don't think there is. And I'd like there to be some sort of a look at it. I mean, I came from a very rural community. We didn't need the expenses and so on of some of the suburban and urban schools. We didn't have the type of impacts that they needed. And the type of infrastructures and so on, even the security things that they needed. We really didn't have those types of needs. So I don't know if I would really have to look at the equity study to see if there's actually something that has to do with if it is a study that is taking the expense needs to the things, and if there's an inequity as far as the expense needs to fulfilling those expense needs, definitely we should do those. Every time I hear the word equity, oh man, my spidey senses go a little tingly because equity can be, something that is a great term. It sounds wonderful when we put it out there, but is it something that is applicable? If it's applicable, absolutely, I'm all for it. But I just have a tingling sensibilities right now that we're probably comparing apples to oranges when we're talking about having the expenses out there.
Fair point. Maybe just a quick follow-up question
Sure.
on that. One of the big issues in South Carolina's rural areas has been facility inequities or inequalities even. We can just go straight to equality in terms of facility plant for a school building, how new, how clean, how safe. So in that lens, what, if any, role do you see for the state in trying to address those kind of issues?
Well, if the community itself feels that their facility needs to have updating to be brought up to par and so on, absolutely, I think they should be able to seek the state's help in bringing that up. If it is something that the community feels is something historical. They like it. They like the brickwork and so on of the outside of the building. They like the planks. Something is there in the school that reminds them of the generations that went before them. Let them keep it. Don't have a third party come in from the outside saying, we've got to take that away. Again, I guess my answer to that is I'm all for it if that's what the local community desires and seeks to have, and if it's best for the students. You're going to see a theme from when we're talking about I want to empower the communities, the teachers, the students, and the parents, and I want to kind of take away a lot of the power of special interests of the administrators that may not be as hands-on, and the legislators that have so much pressure from the outside to, quote, do something when there may not be something locally or across the board that needs to be done.
Sure. Well, and you mentioned empowering teachers, and obviously that's going to resonate with our members since we're a teacher organization. But one other issue of potential inequality or inequity across districts in the state deals with teacher supply. Because our state's dealing with a teacher shortage with over 6,000 teachers leaving the classroom last class year, leading to hundreds of vacancies to start the school year. And those aren't equally spread across the state. It's the rural and lower income areas that are disproportionately impacted by teacher supply issues. So if elected to the General Assembly as a member of the legislature, what steps do you think should be taken at a state level to address teacher recruitment and retention?
Well, I think there are some things we can think of out of the box, maybe to do it. One of the things may not be exactly throwing money into the pot as far as just income, but maybe throwing money into the pot as far as housing. It may be an issue for people going into some of these rural areas that they don't have new land, new housing, new development that's there that they want to live in. And there might be a program where we can have a parsonage, let's call it a teaching parsonage or something like that. That could be something that could be granted or accessible for the people to come in. Or maybe it's something that they just live in temporarily and can go in and that they can use. And that could be a perk that they could have coming into that area. I mean, I think that there are so many things that we could do that are, if we look at each of the areas and why people are not attracted to going into them, and finding out what it is we could make them get into that area, that would be great. Go in, talk to the people in the community, say, or to the teachers themselves, the prospects, and say, what is it that's keeping you from being attracted to teaching in this area? And finding out what we can do to get them in.
One other funding issue that has been prominent in the news is the governor's decision in July to take $32 million in federal COVID relief dollars to create what he calls a Safe Grants program, which is public dollars for private school scholarships for about 5,000 South Carolina students. Now that's currently tied up in the state Supreme Court, but the governor has said that in the coming session, he wants to see the General Assembly create a similar program on a permanent basis using recurring state revenues. So if elected to the General Assembly, and if the governor comes before you in a State of the State address asking for a permanent version of that scholarship program, what's your position on that?
My position is pretty much a push. I don't like it that we have a lot of money that's going into a program. One of the things I want to caution teachers is when they have a program like this, it's not taking anything away from them. Okay, this is just a pile of people's money, of tax money, and this is a pile of tax money that's being pushed into education. So everybody goes, yay. But then somebody says, oh yeah, but it's not public education, it's private education. Boo. We can't think that way. None of us can think that way. We have to think in terms of, is it better for us as the taxpayer? Is that what we want to do with our taxpayer money? If you want to get somebody into private school, usually you take your own money and you go into your pocketbook and you pay to give private school. And that if you've got that kind of money, that's great. That's how it's been in the past. But now we're saying, okay, we're going to give public money to go into private school because it's not fair for again, equitable for somebody that's poorer to have the opportunity to go into private school. So how do we make it equitable? Do we eliminate private schools so it makes it equitable? Or do we put everybody into private schools to make it equitable? Or do we, have 50% of the population going into public school and 50% going into private school to make it equitable? Again, this is the problem we have is perception on trying to make things fair. Let's look at it from individual standpoints. If the governor brings that up in front of me, I want to know where the money is coming from. If this is money that can get kicked back to the public, I'm going to say no. Unfortunately, I'm going to be that kind of no guy anyway, because I don't like a lot of spending. I don't like a lot of that. If I could have my druthers, that money would go straight back to the community, so the community could decide whether they want their students to be upgraded in their public school, or if they've got their public school and private school that they like to, both juggle with, which kind of happened to me in my community. We had a Catholic private school, a Catholic Lutheran school, and a public elementary school, which I went to. And then we all joined together in middle school on up. So people were all the time, funneling money back and forth in the junior or the lower ranks, and then bringing everybody else up. Again, it was a local community choice because they wanted their flavor of religion and morality taught to the kids while they're young, then get them into school where they can corrupt each other and get on up. But anyway, the point being, it's something that the communities need to do. I don't think it's an across the board thing. And I really, with this governor, I have so many things that I disagree with, and it seems like this is something that is a reactionary type of spending, and something that's speaking to a certain type of base that they're looking at. And nothing wrangles me again more than special interests and collectives that are pressuring legislators on up to do things. I don't think that this is something that would be beneficial to, as beneficial to the people in, say, Dillon and Bucksport as it is to, say, Myrtle Beach, or definitely in Charleston or in Columbia. But again, the urban cities, the higher density populations are going to have the greater voice.
Sure. Well, and one other issue that legislators in our state have certainly heard plenty from groups and individuals on over the last 2 years is this idea of educational reform that Speaker Lucas has really led the charge on.
Yeah.
The Senate passed a version of an education reform bill this year. The House did last year. Neither have agreed on one yet. So in the coming legislative session, this idea of educational reform in South Carolina is likely to surface to the top of the legislative agenda again. So as an elected member of the General Assembly, what would be your top priorities for a quote unquote educational reform push in our state?
Again, I think that the push needs to be pushed downward out of the state level. Believe me, the knuckleheads, the further up we get, the more we're knuckleheads, because we're further away from the actual teachers and students and communities that are having to struggle to get those test scores up and to meet those needs. And this is where competition is key. You have to be able to let those kids in the classrooms compete with one another to kind of bring themselves up. And when you have these external, in my opinion, these external tests and scores to be brought up into the situation, it's not going to show what they can do, and you're trying to make them perform outside of what they can actually do. I think the teachers on a local level would have a better handle on it. I think if they came up, if they wanted to do reform, here's what they could do: wipe out all of their their agendas and everything else across the board, and say, I want every community to say how many kids they want to have percentage-wise coming out of their institutions to go into college, and how many of them want to have them going into tech school, how many want them to go into military and other services, and other kids going directly into workforce, and see if they can meet those criteria and agenda, and then adjust for their community. Because you're going to have, you know, in each community, you're going to have rural communities, you're going to have more kids graduating schools and going back onto the family farm. And that's not a bad thing. Some of them, you're going to have more of the suburban communities that everybody's going to want to go into. You know, maybe the tech schools are becoming more popular now. I don't know. To be honest with you, I kind of hope that that's kind of the niche that we're getting into, as a niche education, where we are like, you know, wow, this really interests me. I'm going to go and pursue this type of education.
Yeah, the reform bill in the Senate did have a lot around child alignment and things of that nature.
It did, but I wish, and when I kept looking through it, I just kept saying, you know, man, it seems like it's more of a mandated wish list, top down, instead of here's what we'd like bottom up.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, we have covered a lot of grounds on educational policy, but I want to make sure that you have a chance to share anything that's pertinent with our members. So is there anything you haven't had a chance to share that you absolutely want to make sure they know prior to Election Day in November?
Well, I mean, yeah, I do want to let them know that some things that I have out there, because it may be real confusing for people, especially because I'm not on that red blue, you know, kind of outward, you know, going. Yeah. I'm not pro-gun where I'm forcing everybody to own a gun, but I'm very big on the Second Amendment advocacy and gun rights, big on gun education, and having people individuals being able to protect themselves is very important to me in my small rural community. And I think a lot of times I don't want to see any of the communities find themselves disarmed or unarmed. And I've been so shocked by what's happened lately that it's actually reinforced the feelings I have, because I've been so scared for those people in their homes when the police haven't been able to get to them. Then I'm big with my church and so on. I don't want to impose my religious views, but I love the idea that people can, of any creed, can practice their religion and pray openly. I don't think that it's offensive to anyone to see someone express their own brand of religion. Then we talk about the fun things of libertarianism. Yes, I am for the decriminalization, step on to legalization of marijuana. I think it's out of class as far as the type of drug it is. I think it has about as much recreational use as alcohol. We can regulate it the same way. And I think it actually could help us in our society with lowering the crime rate as far as some of the young people with the misdemeanor type of crimes that they're being put into prisons for. I'm also for legalization of some adult sex work. I think it would also help us. I've talked with people that are in the sex work industry. They think that if we could get these people out of the shadows, they could actually tell about these people that are preying upon young people and the adults in sex trafficking, but they're pushed into the shadows. They can't tell about these insidious people. And I think we could really get a handle on some of this type of problems. I think we can solve some systemic problems in our society by actually getting rid of the exercise of pushing some of these things down and regulating them. Just to let people know, that is where I am. I'm not liberal. I'm not conservative. I'm kind of in the middle. And but I hope that I sound reasonable. I'm not as crazy as somebody might think, or I am as crazy as some people might think. That's okay too.
That's the beauty of the First Amendment. We can have different opinions, and I appreciate you taking the time to share them with our members this afternoon.
Thank you so much.
Wish you all the best this fall, and please let us know if we can ever assist you in any way.
I appreciate it, and thank you for the time.
All right. Thank you, sir.
You bet. Bye-bye.